I like this music. What do you think of these headphones? I wasn't wearing them before. It's sort of an old habit. So we're broadcasting on Facebook Live. I'm Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. And so now I have to worry about what I look like. I'm looking at myself, stunned in my awesomeness. I'm also noticing here a little bit of this sort of like, I've got this like Nixon shadow right now going on right here. It's, I am not a crook. I am Marky Billson. And I said I was going to talk a little bit about the assistant coaches that have been hired. I know most Tennessee fans are probably all down with this here, but offensive coordinators Tyson Helton, Robert Gillespie stays on as the running back coach. And yeah, that was the one unit for Tennessee that actually seemed to do well this past year. Offensive line coach Will Friend. Some question about whether Kevin Shearer, is he going to be a defensive coordinator with Chris Rump? Is Chris Rump going to be the, inside linebacker? What's he going to be? Terry Fair to coach the secondary. I like that. Tracy Rocker, presumably to coach the defensive line. I like that. Chris Wenke, the former Heisman winner at Florida State, to be the quarterback's coach. I like that. Brian Niedermeyer, director of player personnel. Who cares? It's a nice staff. I do remind everyone what Caleb Calhoun said, and all for Tennessee, that, one should not hire the coach at Tennessee based on the staff that he reportedly will bring in. Should hire the head coach for being the head coach. I've also said that they could do far worse, could Tennessee, than Jeremy Pruitt. My concern is this is a guy who was interviewed and turned down by Mississippi State. Tennessee, after finishing in dead last place in the SEC, despite their tradition, is falling fast in the hierarchy of the conference. 20 years since it's been a conference championship. They've been ranked number one in basketball since they've been ranked number one in football, certainly. And also, more than 10 years since even a division title. Said that all the teams that really are built to win division titles in the SEC, Eastern Division, and that would exclude Vanderbilt and Kentucky, although believe it or not, although I sometimes do wonder about Derek Mason and some of the moves that he makes. I can't believe, for instance, it took him this long to settle on Kyle Shermer as a quarterback. And look what happened when he finally did. But you look at some of what Vanderbilt, I think now, you look at the success that a Stanford has, that a Baylor historically, prior to this year, had, that a Northwestern has had. I think Vanderbilt can win. Yeah, even in the uber tough SEC. The other thing I never buy about the SEC East, that's the weaker division. The conference champ did come from the SEC East this year. That's the weaker division. It's not as strong as it used to be. Poppycock. When the SEC East was weak? When Tennessee was winning the national championship. I've said it once, I'll say it again. That's when South Carolina was going 1-10. That's when Vanderbilt and Kentucky didn't have a clue. There was no Missouri. Georgia was down, and all you had to beat was Florida. That was the entire division. Now it's much more, shall I say, bottom heavy. And for that matter, Georgia at 12-1 and playing for a national championship with the best running game in the country, do you really think that isn't a top-heavy team? Do you really think that Kirby Smart's Bulldogs aren't a team worthy of, the 2001 Vols? Really? They've been quite dominant. They exorcised their demon by beating Auburn in the SEC title game. That's a very strong team. They're 12-1. I said they'd go 12-0. They went 11-1. Okay. You want to know where else I was right? It was the New Orleans Saints this year. Although I do want them to beat someone who's good. They've lost their games to the Eagles and to the Patriots, and for that matter, to the Rams recently, and then the Falcons on Thursday. But I said that was a team they're building up for one last run. I still haven't counted them out. Certainly you shouldn't at 9-4. But anyway, that's another thing. Where Billson was right. I'm going to be saying that. And also, Nate Peterman threw a touchdown pass in the snow. Bills beat the Colts. I'm telling you right now. Remember what I said? Peterman's better than Dobbs. He started 2 NFL games. First one didn't go well. No. But he also beat out T.J. Yates. Dobbs is yet to beat out Landry Jones in Pittsburgh. I'm not expecting Dobbs to beat out Ben Roethlisberger. No. I realize it's tougher to beat out Ben Roethlisberger than Tyrod Taylor. I realize you're not going to beat out Ben Roethlisberger. But I'm just saying, he didn't beat out the backup. Didn't look tremendously good in the preseason. Peterman did. What about those 5 interceptions, Marky? Yeah. Sometimes you start bad. I get that. I'd still, if I'm the Bills, I'm sorry. I've seen enough of Tyrod Taylor. I don't care what ESPN, the magazine, is saying. And it was almost criminal for them to try to say that the quarterback rating of, Tyrod Taylor and compare that to Jim Kelly. That's a sin. That's like telling me, I don't know, Doc Kramer is a better hitter than Giancarlo Stanton because Doc Kramer hit 30 points higher in the batting average. Yeah, look him up. Okay, I know you don't know who he is. I do. That's why I'm hosting this show. I'm Marky Billson. I'll bet you would have bet good money that you could have gone through this entire show without a reference to Doc Kramer, who played his last Major League game in 1948. Anyway. That's the case. So anyway, that's the offensive coordinators. You're looking at me here on Facebook right now, reaching for my notes. And that's going to lead me to my next topic, which is Adam Rittenberg. He's written this story right here. And it's grading the college football coaching hires so far. And what does he have to say about what's going on? Who's made the best hires? Who's made the worst? Where does Tennessee rate? Adam Rittenberg writes this, and he says the A hires that have been made. UCLA, bringing in Chip Kelly for Jim Mora. I think Jim Mora is a stooge, okay? I think he's gotten where he is on his name, on his father's name. I think very little of Jim Mora as a coach. In that regards, I mean, bringing in the man in the moon, bring in Chip Kelly, who's had a team that played for the national championship and has a lot of, they give a lot of credit to resurrecting Oregon. Okay, yeah, sure. Thing about Chip Kelly, though, is that, yes, Oregon did go on probation. And also, I'm not ready to give him an A. I mean, Kelly is the guy that let Kaepernick sit. If he had gone and he said, you're my backup quarterback, you stand for this thing. And if Kaepernick had won and complained, he cut him right there, I think he'd still be coaching the San Francisco 49ers. And we wouldn't be having this whole movement in the NFL sitting for the anthem. We wouldn't have that. I think Chip Kelly, his coaching moves can be, yes, directly related to some of the lack of interest in football and the criticism. Ryan Shazier, the horrific injury. It looks like he's getting better, thank goodness. It looks like he won't be paralyzed for life. He was tweeting out, especially what I understand, he can use his arms and all this, but he is in a Pittsburgh hospital, and there's very emotional victory for the Steelers against the Ravens yesterday. But there's so much criticism after that game of, this is almost saying that this is why we should ban football after the Shazier injury in the game against the Bengals and with the Steelers. And, you'd have less of that if Chip Kelly had merely said to Colin Kaepernick, sir, you're all legs. You're a reason why I'm here due to your shoddy play as the coach and not a Jim Tomasula or a Jim Harbaugh. You respect the anthem. I don't care if we're in San Francisco. I don't care if you're tweeting out about Black Lives Matter or the Black Panthers, which Colin Kaepernick is known to do. You stand for the anthem. If he had done that the old school way, we wouldn't have all this mess. Nebraska, out with Mike Riley, who's now an ancillary coach, I believe, at Oregon State. Well, good for Oregon State. Scott Frost in, that's a good hire. I'm surprised Scott Frost didn't go to Florida. I mean, I realize Nebraska's his alma mater, and so it's obviously there's a lot of his heart that dealt in there. But yeah, Nebraska does have the feel of yesterday's program. I think Texas A&M could be a program of tomorrow. I like the culture of the university there in terms of having football go forward. Also, Texas A&M is well known as being the school that will pay Fort Knox to any coach that wants them. They were the ones that first started paying big money for college football coaches back in 1982 with Jackie Sherrill. That's one of the ways they brought in Jimbo Fisher from Florida State. And although Fisher came off a disappointing season at Florida State, a real disappointing season where they're preseason number 3 and wound up 6-6, still the man's won a national championship. He was the heir apparent to Bobby Bowden, Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M. They give that an A-. An A-? I would have given that higher ranks than Chip Kelly, to tell you the truth. Dan Mullen to Florida is an A-. Florida made the smart, sensible hire. Scott Strickland, he coming back together, says Adam Rittenberg. Mullen needs to win in Gainesville, who wouldn't? But he also needs to entertain. And his track record with quarterbacks like Tim Tebow, Dak Prescott, and Nick Fitzgerald suggests it'll happen sooner than later. Remember this about Florida. They've never had a real great pro quarterback. They've had great quarterbacks. Heck, 2 of them have won Heisman trophies. But, I mean, even when Rex Grossman was taking the Bears to the Super Bowl, Gale Sayers was speaking out and saying how much he stunk. I mean, they've never really had a real good... I like Doug Johnson. I like Doug Johnson a lot, but he was drafted to a team that had Michael Vick, and it just was never in the cards for him to beat him out. There have been a lot of... Kerwin Bell never was going to... By the way, Baker Mayfield winning a Heisman. Didn't have a chance to say this. First walk-on to do so. I remember Kerwin Bell. There's a name from really the past, the 80s. But he was a Heisman candidate who actually, if memory serves, I think Emmitt Smith actually moved ahead of him in the Heisman race while he was playing for the Florida Gators his freshman year, as a matter of fact. The preseason Heisman favorite, or on the team at least, was Bell. And then it wound up being Emmitt Smith that started getting the votes because, well, he's Emmitt Smith, and that was Kerwin Bell. But Kerwin Bell, the point is, was a walk-on who did rather well, and that was the last real good walk-on that I can remember who kind of starred, and certainly he did not star to the point that Baker Mayfield did. Anyway, let's go back to the coaching rankings. Dan Mullen, he had Mississippi State at number 1 in the country. I think, that's a good hire for Florida. Who did Mississippi State hire? Joe Moorhead. And he says that that's a smart hire on so many levels. I like Bob Shoop going from Tennessee to Mississippi State. Remember, Mississippi State hired Joe Moorhead, the old Penn State offensive coordinator, over defensive coordinator of Alabama, Jeremy Pruitt. Moorhead is charismatic, down to earth. He'll connect well with Mississippi State fans, even though he's not from the area. And what I like about him, he began his coaching career in 1998 at the University of Pittsburgh. He was a graduate assistant. I lived a dream, 1998 Pitt. I was a sideline reporter for the Pitt Panthers. I was in 98. I won one game against Temple and all that. But yeah, so I have something in common with Moorhead. So I like that. Willie Taggart is a B hire, according to Mr. Rittenberg. Willie Taggart going to Florida State to replace Jimbo Fisher. Young, offensive-minded, roots with the Harbaugh family, played for Jack and coached for Jim. Don't hurt either. Also genuinely wants to be at Florida State. Well, who doesn't? Problem is he's 47-50. Only 1 year leading a Power 5 program. Tallahassee, you got to win the ACC. You got to win national titles. B hire. But I don't know. That was the one that I just said, Willie Taggart? Really? You really want Willie Taggart? I know Willie Taggart, some people were talking about him at Tennessee. I don't think after Fulmer took over, it was ever in the cards for a current head coach to become the head coach at Tennessee. I think that they just feared him being too meddlesome, and we'll have to wait and see if that takes place. But Jeremy Pruitt, defensive coordinator. Yeah, I'd rather have Pruitt than Taggart my own self. I really would. Jonathan Smith replaces Gary Anderson at Oregon State. I know Dennis Erickson did well at Oregon State. Dennis Erickson was interested in the job. This is a B hire. Let's see here. He is a Smith won big as a former Beavers quarterback. Likes Corvallis. That's big. Benefits from learning under Chris Peterson both at Boise State and Washington. Oregon State ideally wanted someone with head coaching experience. Smith lacks that, but you know what? Initially, John Curry wanted that too, didn't he? I think fans are kind of really, I think fans like Pruitt in Tennessee. I don't see a lot of people saying, that's a bad hire. And if Curry had targeted someone like that initially, I think he'd still be the AD at Tennessee. So an offensive coordinator, hey, that's fine. Being a former Beaver, he'll probably be given time to turn around a 2-10 team. That's good too. Rice. I don't know why Rice didn't hire Matt Canada. I really like Matt Canada, the LSU offensive coordinator. Instead, they hired Mike Bloomgren to replace David Bailiff. I know a lot of people are saying it's Rice. You can't win there. Come on. They did win 10 games just a few years ago. Bloomgren will incorporate technology and analytics to help give the Owls edge. If ever there was a place where you would try to use technology and analytics to win, it would probably be Rice. I don't think they're going back to the Cotton Bowl like they used to go to back in the 50s. But we'll see how it works out with Bloomgren. He's a B hire. Here's the problem, though. Jeremy Pruitt, Tennessee, Adam Rittenberg saying that's a B-. A meandering and messy search gets a failing grade, and it became clear after the Greg Schiano debacle that Tennessee wouldn't ace this hire. Pruitt could work out well. He spent time at 3 programs, Florida State, Georgia, and now Alabama, that strive for national titles. Florida State's defense hasn't been the same since he left. Good point. Alabama hasn't dropped off, however, since he arrived. Good point. There will be a learning curve for the first-time college coach, always a concern. But Pruitt is an excellent recruiter. There we go with that again. I guess when you're hiring a guy with pro experience, you know. I said Tom Arth from Division III down to Chattanooga. He couldn't be called a good recruiter. But other than that, it's like, he's a good recruiter. What college coach are you not going to say that about? Strong personality. I haven't gotten the strong personality from Pruitt fan. I've seen a lot of cliches. I'm not going strong personality, and all that yet with Jeremy Pruitt. I think strong personality. I think Jim Valvano. That's not Jeremy Pruitt. However, B-. I think B-, that grade is given because of the way the search was. The other thing is, and this would just be, it's impossible to win at Tennessee if this is the case and this turns out. And this is the one thing you got to worry about now with Phil Fulmer as the AD. How meddlesome will he be? Well, we want Phil Fulmer to work with the team. He won a national title and all that 20 years ago. You've got to let the head coach be the head coach. And you've got to, that's a concern right there. Chad Morris replacing Brett Bielema, B-. Texas high school scene will spur Arkansas recruiting efforts. In other words, Morris is well known in Texas. And 1 year at SMU, by the way, his entire recruiting class was from Texas. Now he's at Arkansas. You'd think that they'd want to bring in somebody from Arkansas or Memphis at Arkansas, to be honest with you. The thing is, SMU, we know that they have challenges. I mean, since the death penalty, they just haven't won except for the June Jones era and this one season of 7-5 with Chad Morris. But even with that, the idea is he was coaching high school football in 2009. I know Jeremy Poplin from Tulsa told him, this guy, I worked with him, just great. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's how he got a job in the SEC. From after less than 10 years of coaching high school football. I mean, somebody's got to be likable, but we shall see. That's a B- hire. But yeah, that's what the national media is saying. B- hire Chad Morris, and I'll buy that. B- hire Jeremy Pruitt. And I kind of buy that too, although I do think that a lot of that B- stemmed from the coaching search and the debacle that was. Josh Heupel replacing Scott Frost. They give that a C. I think that's too low. I think it's a big pickup for UCF. I think Josh Heupel is good. I look at what he did with Drew Lock at Missouri. I wrote last year at Saturday Down South, Josh Heupel was the best coordinator hire in the SEC. He proved to be that. That's better than a C hire. Dana Dimmel at UTEP, Sean Kluger, they give it a C. Who cares? It's UTEP. Georgia Southern, Chad Lunsford, replacing Tyson Summers, grade a C. I would not grade it as C because I think that you could have had T. Martin, and if you can have the offensive coordinator at Southern California who applied for the Georgia Southern job instead of a interim coach who went 2-4 following a 0-8 start or whatever it was, then come on. You could add T. Martin or you could add Chad Lunsford. You could have offensive coordinator from Southern California who puts up 30 points or more a game. All the great quarterbacks there. All the big offensive numbers. Pac-12 champion. No, there's Lunsford over here. Let's hire him. That to me is worse than a C grade. Ole Miss, they just went with Matt Luke over Hugh Freeze. They give that a C-. The team was going out of business. Matt Luke, does anybody heard about Shea Patterson? That's what he's got to worry about. The worst hire that they give, they being Adam Rittenberg. Todd Graham out. Nobody likes Todd Graham. Personality kills you. Once left to school by text message. That's Bobby Petrino stuff. In Herm Edwards. He hasn't coached in a million years. Was he really that successful when he was a coach? He's keeping the whole staff. Why are you getting rid of a coach who had a winning record? Because he's Todd Graham, that's why. He hasn't coached college football since 1989. He was 20 games under 500 as an NFL coach. I'm going to tell you something here. You know how Arizona State hired Herm Edwards? I'm convinced of this. And it might be, if my earlier theory of Mike Smith coming to ETSU comes to fold, although I think that's something of a long shot. The reason why the John Gruden rumors, they became so strong, the Tennessee rumor that I always speak of, that never has any chance to come true, but fans are always exceedingly optimistic, thinking that it will come true, resulted in John Curry wasting some time trying to pursue Gruden to come to Tennessee, when he should have said, there's no way John Gruden is coming to Tennessee. And then looked around and said, okay, who is coming to Tennessee? Who can I really get that may not be involved in child molestation charge somehow or allowing that? Who can I get that'll come in? And the point here being that there were so many rumors about John Gruden that I think it allowed the idea nationally for our former professional coach like Herm Edwards, who hadn't coached in a long time, to be considered as a college coach, a Bud Wilkinson type hire. There's a name from the past, but he didn't do all that well with the old St. Louis Cardinals now, did he? They're in Arizona now. So now is Herm Edwards. But I do think that, yeah, the sort of the culture that was created by the, blasphemous Tennessee rumor, if you will, those Tennessee fans were exceedingly optimistic. I know we'll dig up Vince Lombardi and he'll be the coach. I mean, that's about as far as they go. And if you go with, you look at did John Gruden and all those rumors make the culture acceptable to hire a Herm Edwards at Arizona State? I think it did. They also may have had us consider now Gruden as a coach. There's some scuttlebutt now. Could he come back to Tampa Bay? And that would kind of make some sense. That you can see 9 years. Look what happened with Joe Gibbs at Washington. You can kind of see that. But then Would that mean that Smith, who I believe has 5 more years on his contract, but even so, a new broom does tend to sweep clean, would Mike Smith stay on as a defensive coordinator? Now, ETSU would still have to pay Mike Smith. I think they'd have to pay him a pretty penny because he's used to being making, and I don't have his salary, but he's got to be making close to $1 million, if not more. And that's probably more than ETSU wants to pay for their next coach. However, head football coach, I should say. However, if he's out of a job and he wants to continue to coach, and he'd like to give back to his alma mater, now he may not want to go to Johnson City, Tennessee. I mean, he left that D1 stuff behind when he went to Baltimore to become the linebackers coach there. Bright lights, big city. Mike Smith. They don't even play in the Dome anymore. However, if he still has the ambition to be a coach, and since there are only so many defensive coordinatorships available, and since his stock then would be declining and not rising, would that make an ETSU a possibility? Again, ETSU would have to pay. I would imagine they'd have to at least start at $500,000. I don't know if they want to pay that a year. And you'd be also talking to, old coach. But so much conversation, so much praise of Carl Torbush and his 11-22 record that, yeah, you know what? Smith would seem to be a coach cut out of that Torbush veteran coach style. He'd also be the most famous coach in the SoCon, hands down. I don't know. Would he be motivated after being in the NFL, returning to ETSU? That's a concern. That's a big concern. Would he be motivated when he, in all likelihood, I mean, the man made millions. I think his base salary as the Atlanta Falcons football coach was $2.75 million, plus bonuses that could take that above $5 million in a year. ETSU can't pay that. That's half their athletic budget. However, he would be, if he was willing to take less, hey, Mike, taxes will just eat that up already. We're no income tax state. Come on. That sort of thing. And he was willing to, that's just consideration. And probably as good as any name I've put out there. Although I would say the name that others aren't talking about that they should talk about here, and I will say it again and again, and that's the defensive coordinator at Texas San Antonio. That's Pete Golding, used to be at Tusculum, and there is not a potential college football prospect in Upper East Tennessee that is worth his salt, that is not being recruited by Texas San Antonio, and that is because of Golding. Defensive coordinator, you got to figure, hey, it's the way that ETSU went with Torbush. Hey, we'll see what comes about. Anyway, there's that. They put 2 more people into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I don't have a problem with who they did put in. I got a break, and I'll talk to you about that tomorrow on Tri-City Sports Now.